Let's have ourselves a little bit of a Montreal Canadiens gushing session. And before we get things underway, I wanted to apologize because first off, this gameplay, it's not ideal. Yesterday, October 18th, I spent the entire day making my Vancouver Canucks GM mode and franchise, so we're a few years into that, and the roster is to a point where I can consistently start making gameplays on it and actually find satisfaction out of that. But for the Canadiens, this is some early GM mode. After a few early moves, I'm going to probably take all of today, which is October 19th, and flesh out this entire roster, so the next time we record a Habs video, it will have a very different makeup to its overall team. But taking a look at what exactly the topic it is we have at hand today, it is those same Montreal Canadiens, and it's how they are, in my opinion, and in many people's opinions as well, the biggest winners of the 2020 NHL offseason. Now, the offseason started a long time ago for Montreal. It was after they got eliminated in the postseason. It was in the first round of the Stanley Cup Playoffs to the Philadelphia Flyers. For the most part, people were surprised they even made the playoffs because, they were the worst team out of all 24 teams to be included in the NHL's return to play format, and they were supposed to be drafting 9th overall, but eventually they beat Pittsburgh in the play-in series. They eliminated Sidney Crosby on his birthday, which was very funny. I mean, not funny as in haha Crosby, but it's ironic. But we had ourselves what was a very long time of waiting before Bergevin ended up doing much because his Montreal Canadiens were indeed eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. But just because they were eliminated does not mean that they had an opportunity to come out here and strike, because that is exactly what they did. They started things off in September 1st with a trade with the St. Louis Blues. This came in the middle of the second round of the playoffs, but it kind of caught everybody off guard because, hey, the Montreal Canadiens just traded for Jake Allen. This is an expensive goaltender, albeit a very good one. He's supposed to split the reins with Carey Price next season. He was signed to an extension, which we'll get to a little bit later. But for the most part, what the Canadiens did with this trade was they improved their goaltending. Sure, you don't really need to do that if you have Carey Price, but who'd you rather have as a backup? Michael McNiven or Jake Allen? Yeah, I think I'm going with the guy who almost single-handedly gave the St. Louis Blues a chance to beat the Vancouver Canucks after tying up their Round 1 series, but that's just me. Going forward, though, we had a few other moves done by the Canadiens. They re-signed a few guys, but the big move was made on September 11th. Joel Edmundson was acquired by the Montreal Canadiens from the Carolina Hurricanes in exchange for a 5th-round pick. Now, this was a guy who was a free agent, so there was just the negotiation rights that were being acquired here. However, it didn't take long for the Montreal Canadiens to re-sign him to a 4-year contract extension later that week. This is a move that, honestly, if you take a look at it dollar for value, you could debate there were other better moves to be made. But at the end of the day, what Edmundson provides is a very stable, defensive-minded defender who can play on the back end, log up some second-line, top 4 D-man minutes, and, act as another one of these sheltering guys along with Ben Sherratt to allow Alexander Romanov to exhibit the NHL game at a meaningful and manageable pace. Plus, it makes your team harder to play against, which is definitely what the Canadiens wanted, especially since they've got a small forward core, etc. The story with Montreal and being small. Next up, though, we then had a few other contract extensions. Jake Evans signed an extension, Jeff Petrie signed an extension, same with Blandisi, Lucchini, and McNiven. You had a few guys in there that were pretty nice. Then you had Carl Alzner, who got bought out at the beginning of October. Now, I'm not going to pretend like buying out Carl Alzner was the most impressive and most sophisticated move in the world, but it was one that Canadiens fans were like, yes, finally, this signals a new direction here on this team because we need the money for other stuff. Carl Alzner was a disappointment in Montreal, but at the end of the day, the guy's getting paid, and the guy was in the Laval Rocket system doing his thing too, but now he indeed is bought out. The same day, though, the Montreal Canadiens did a very interesting thing. They traded Max Domi for Josh Anderson. We spoke about earlier how they wanted to get bigger. They did that with this trade. Acquiring Josh Anderson, a big right wing who can score goals in high quantities, and albeit he didn't do that last year, but that was because he was injured, but the projection for him going into the next few seasons is back to form where he was able to get himself almost 30 goals in 2018-19. This is a guy who can definitely help out as a second-line right wing, playing alongside of, Nick Suzuki, Kotkaniemi, whoever you want to have on that second-line spot. It's definitely going to be an interesting little thing over there. Then you had yourselves a few more things that happened. Dale Weiss, gone. Kincaid, gone. Folan, gone. Freeberg, gone. Sorry, guys. Then you had a few other guys as well, who indeed did sign and decided to come back. Victor Mete came back. Xavier Ouellet came back. So that was pretty nice to round out October. But towards the middle part of free agency, this is where things got interesting, because the Montreal Canadiens did not really do much at the beginning. Or at least, they were trying to do something at the beginning, but they didn't end up doing it. They were trying to go after Wayne Simmons, but he didn't accept Montreal's offer, which apparently was more valuable than Toronto's offer. He went with Toronto because, hey, he's from Toronto. Nice hometown connection there. So the Canadiens, what they did was they sat back and they waited. They were in a position where they just had a whole bunch of time and a whole bunch of other free agents to go after. Taylor Hall was the big guy on the market, and Habs fans were saying, Bergevin should probably try it. Why not? Go after it, Mark. And I know we spoke about this in a video earlier, but Bergevin actually had comments previously in the year where he said that he would not be going after Hall because the price would be too high, and that he wouldn't touch Patrick Laine either because the price for that would be too high too. So they waited. The Canadiens waited, and Habs fans were kind of freaking out because Taylor Hall was going to Buffalo. All these other guys were going. Pietrangelo signed with Vegas, and you had yourselves a Habs team that was just kind of sitting, doing their own thing, and the Canadiens fan base didn't really know what was up. Until they signed Tyler Toffoli, and this does indeed break my heart again because I'm a Vancouver Canucks fan, and hearing about how Tyler Toffoli wasn't even really an option that they wanted to explore, oh man, it's very interesting to think about. But the Canadiens getting him, man, this is crazy good now. Because what Marc Bergevin did was he added himself some goal scoring. Tyler Toffoli and Anderson can both score goals, especially to a greater capacity than what Max Domi would have achieved on his own. Edmundson's a guy who comes in, he brings some size, he brings some stability on the back end. Jake Allen comes in here, he provides some very good backup goaltending. He was extended into a contract as well. He'll be getting $2-something million over the next 2 seasons after playing out this $4 million season over here, which makes him expansion draft eligible. So that in itself is a very good identification for the contract as well. And all of a sudden, the Montreal Canadiens have put themselves in a spot where people on TV, people on the radio, people on social media are saying this team could be the best team in Canada now. It's this team or Toronto. And for some reason, the team with Marner, Matthews, Tavares, and Morgan Rielly, in the eyes of some people, does not stack up against this Habs team. And we spoke about this previously, but that top 9, oh man, this is no Marner, Matthews, Tavares going on over here, but my goodness, this top 9 is incredible. Tatar, Deneau, Gallagher is the first line. Then you have Drouin, Suzuki, Anderson on your second line. Ooh, that's great. For the third line, you have Jesperi Kotkaniemi centering what would be Tyler Toffoli and I guess Joel Armia. It's kind of weird because Toffoli does play right wing and Armia does too. Toffoli actually was mostly a right-wing guy with the Vancouver Canucks. He played on the left side on the power play, but that was about it. For the Vancouver Canucks, he was that number 1 right wing, though. Playing with Elias Pettersson and JT Miller when Brock Besser came back, there was a little bit of a shuffle that went on throughout the games and the playoffs, but for the most part, Toffoli, I guess he can probably play on the left side if he really wanted to do things like that, but he played right wing in Vancouver, so I'm just going to assume that's how he's going to want to continue. But even if you keep things away, they are right there. You have yourselves a right wing core of Gallagher, Anderson, Toffoli, and Armia, and those are 4 very capable middle top 6 caliber right wings. And man, you love to see it. You really do love to see it. For the D pairings, you got Sherratt Weber, Edmundson, Petrie, and then you have Alexander Romanov in there somewhere. You also got the Victor Metes, the Kulaks as well that you want to toss up in there and shuffle around. But the Canadiens in general just really did get better in this offseason. And you can say that Domi is indeed better or worse than Anderson or whatever, but the styles, guys, it's the style, the play style here, which was the goal. They wanted to achieve a goal-scoring, big, powerful forward out of Anderson, and that's what they got. Domi is not that. Domi's a guy who was playing on the 4th line in the playoffs because he was outworked by Deneau, Kotkaniemi, and Suzuki. He wanted to play center, he didn't want to play wing. So now Columbus can take that contract. And sure, you could say that, Domi probably should have gotten more for the Canadiens. I get that, but, at the end of the day, this Habs team, in my opinion, is better on paper than it was last year. So That's why, to me, they are indeed the biggest winners of this free agency period, this offseason period thus far. We haven't even spoken about the draft. The draft was a completely different animal, but I hope you enjoyed this video. Talk to me in the comments what you think about the Montreal Canadiens and their overall offseason and what they have done. So, this is Trollus99, and bye.